Hey, casual tutorial time. Let's do rejections. I got a request to do magic drop. That seems like sort of, there should be some interesting misconceptions that I can get past. So anyway, first let's talk about normal rejections. Rejection is anytime you're on the trapeze, you kick the yo-yo to one side and the string will be forced out of the gap by friction against the side of the yo-yo. So you can sort of see that if I just move the string rather than the yo-yo. Sort of, the string grabs against the side of the yo-yo and gets kicked out, which is basically what makes it different from something like a hop, for example. You can just sort of hop the yo-yo out, but that's not the same as sort of just pulling it to the side like that. So, anyway, based on that, there are two obvious things you need to experiment around with in order to get your rejections to work. One of which is sideways movement, sort of how much pressure is being pushed against the side of this yo-yo. And so usually you're doing that by pushing the yo-yo to the side. The rejection is usually going to happen when the yo-yo is at the top of its swing, so be aware of that. That will sort of just help you get a little more aware of the timing of things. If it's not rejecting, then you might need to push it a little farther. Alternatively, it might be an issue with how tight you're holding the trapeze. So if you're holding your trapeze super tight, you're not going to get very much rejection. And if you're holding it super loose, you're not going to get much rejection, and if you do, it'll just be sort of sloppy. So you're going to have to find a happy middle ground. I find that depending on how sticky your hands are, just sort of holding it as neutral as possible is usually fine. You might find that adding a little bit of pinch helps you. It will depend on you, but those are the two main variables for these main rejections, sort of normal rejections that you're going to want to experiment with. So experiment with how much pressure the string is exerting against the side of the yo-yo and how tightly, how much tension you have pulling on the string. And now let's cover a few ways that you can use these. One of my favorites is from a one-handed trapeze. So get into your one-handed trapeze like that. And from here, you're going to push the yo-yo forward. It's going to reject, and you're going to have a bit of slack that you can manipulate. So there, that was a little sloppy because my string tension was bad, but you basically got the idea of that. So just to repeat that one more time. One-handed trapeze, kick it out, you get a slack, and you can swing the slack back into the yo-yo. You can do whatever you want with that. Sure, you can figure out something to do with that. Then another thing you can do with sort of normal rejections is you can do it from behind the arm like this, kick it forward. Then usually if you're, I think often what you see is kicking it out and then landing in a trapeze again. I'm not great at it, so you're probably not going to see me do one successfully, but that's the idea. Sometimes you also see people use that to get into a green triangle, for example. There are things you can land out of that depending on how you manipulate the slacks. But similarly to that, you can also do a front side green triangle, and then you can push that out. So just to connect it back to a previous episode of this show, you can do it from, say, a dream catcher. So get into your dream catcher, there, pop, and now there, and you're good. So I got a little twisted up there, but you get the idea. You can get into a green triangle and then reject out the front. Okay, now for the elephant in the room, which is magic drop. So basically the thing that I want you to realize about the magic drop is that it is a rejection. It is the same kind of rejection as everything else, just instead of managing it all with sort of moving your hands away and apart from each other, it's managed by this thing here. And just to demonstrate that, you can sort of break down the magic drop into two parts. Okay, so once you get into the mount, the first part is swinging over the arm, and the second part is getting the rejection to work. I mean, you can do that rejection for whatever you want to do it for, but anyway, you get the idea there. You get in there, swing over, reject, and then you land it on the string that you want it to land on. Okay, so that's an important thing to consider. There or there. Okay. But so that means that there are those two factors we're concerned with. We're concerned with how much sideways pressure we're putting on the string, and we're concerned with how much sort of pull, how much tension we have on it. And those are both managed by this L shape here. So the main way that you manage the pressure situation is with how hard you're moving the yo-yo and the direction of this L shape. So if the direction is like this, sort of in line with this, you're not going to get a rejection. So in order to get the rejection, it needs to be facing towards you, up, or even tilted out slightly. But I usually have it sort of pointed towards me, and that works for me. So like that if you want to do it on the front side, or like that if you want to do it on the back side. I usually cheat a little bit by pulling these strings apart with my finger, but you can, practice it not doing that. And if you're better than me, you'll be able to land it pretty consistently. But I'm just not super consistent with it yet. And to manage the tension, sort of how much tension there is on the string, that's the way I see it, mainly based on sort of how hard you're pulling apart these fingers. And the friction between each of these fingers will adjust how much tension there is as the yo comes over the top. So anyway, those are the two things you're going to want to focus on when you're trying to learn the magic drop. You're going to want to focus on getting this sort of the segment here pointed either towards you or sort of in this plane rather than tilted towards where the yo-yo is. So like here, 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 instead of here. And then the other thing you're going to need to focus on is figuring out how tightly you need to hold your hand and everything in order to get the rejection to work. And then from there, it's a matter of landing on the right string, which is also hard, but the main thing that I find helpful if I'm trying to land it just on the back string, for example, is tilt your non-throw hand index slightly forward, is I think one of the main things to help with that. And sort of you're going to aim for the yo-yo, you want it to land towards the back, so your goal is to have, if you miss, for your misses to be through the back rather than on the front. Sort of, I think missing in the back helps tell you that you're close, if that makes sense. So, that'll just take practice. Not great at it, so it goes. Anyway, so summary of all that. Rejections are basically a trick where you get the string off of the yo-yo by pushing it to the side like that. You can do it for a bunch of interesting things, including the magic drop, which is a popular and very misunderstood trick. It is a rejection just like any other rejection, but the difference is just that the mount handles a lot of the logistics rather than big macroscopic movements. And anyway, if you like the show, let me know. If you have questions or requests, let me know. If you've been liking the show, if you've been watching it, thanks.